All right, folks, it is time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase with Adam Moskowitz. How you doing today, Adam?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great, Greg. Thank you.
Adam just flew in. Today is the 1-year anniversary of the collapse, the horrific collapse of the Surfside, the Champlain Towers South building. Did I get that right, Adam?
You did. CTS.
98 people died. Horrible story. And the case was filed and has now been settled, and the judges approved it in 1 year. Remarkable. Anyhow, so we're here today to talk about the settlement and the case and all that good stuff. So what, you know what? I don't even have a question. Adam, run with it. Tell us what's going on.
Well, I think, Greg, if these facts were in a John Grisham novel, I think you'd put it down after 10 pages and just say, that's just not believable. You know, I mean, it sounds like a nice legal thriller, but there's no way that happened. There's no way that all of this happened within 1 year. Never in the history of any class action ever. I don't care, federal, state court, I don't care where in the country. There's never been a case where such a horrible tragedy occurred. There's no one clearly to blame. It's not like a terrorist hit the 9/11 towers. A building just fell at 1:15 last night, a year ago. 98 people died. Over 120 people were homeless. They lost their homes. And we came in, the lawyers, the judge, and the receiver, and in less than 1 year, we collected about $1.2 billion for the victims, and the deal was granted final approval last night. So that setting of a story, even of a movie, you couldn't believe it. I mean, you know hearings, you know courts. I mean, you don't get a hearing for a couple months on a motion to dismiss. How did we get final approval of a class action against 48 different defendants that quickly? It's just mind-boggling when you look back on it, and it's hard to comprehend how it was able to get done. It really is.
You know, as an attorney, I would have just assumed that 48 defendants. Are you kidding me? Cross claims, everybody pointing the finger at each other, denying, delaying. I would have expected this to have run for 10 years. But I wanted one of the quotes that I see the judge. So it was Judge Michael Hanzman approved the settlement yesterday, the second largest class action in Florida history. Adam Moskowitz, by the way, is one of the premier class action attorneys. In this case, is going to be even, I don't know how much higher up the chain you go after this experience. You know, my girlfriend would give me a horror show if she heard this and I didn't give you the proper introduction. So Adam, that's your proper introduction. I'll drop a link about Adam Moskowitz's firm in case somebody out there might have, you know, questions or whatever. So, all right. So 48 defendants. Can you tell us who the big players were on the defendant side and why they were sued?
Yeah, I mean, and it's in the paper too. Everything is publicly disclosed. The two largest contributors were Securitas, which is the security company of the building. I think it was $514 million in insurance that they paid. And then Terra Construction, the people that built the next door neighbor building, was a little over $200 million. And the security company, it's just shocking because thank God there were survivors, because it's the survivors that were able to tell us what happened that night. You know, we had to piece together what happened. We hired 12 of the best experts in the world in building construction. We really didn't use much of their work, right? Because we didn't go to trial. We didn't have many hearings. So NHTSA and the different federal authorities that are investigating what happened, they'll probably take a couple more years before they figure out exactly what caused the collapse. So we had to very quickly rush and run into discovery, but the survivors were the ones that really put the pieces together. For example, my first client that I met, a hero upon hero, is Raisa Rodriguez. This woman crazily called her brother when the pool deck first fell. So there was a big collapse at the towers because the pool collapsed. So a lot of people were awoken because of that noise. So nobody had died yet. The pool collapsed. Everybody's freaking out. And people call the security desk downstairs in the lobby because for the last few weeks, a year ago, they were testing all of the alarms in the building. They were testing the public announcements. Each apartment had a speaker so they could actually announce in the apartment, this is an emergency, something's going on. And they tested the alarm before this nightmare. So when the pool deck fell, some people called the security desk and talked to the woman and said, what's going on? And she said, I have no idea. I'm going to try to find out what happened. And we took her deposition very quickly. And one of the lawyers, Judd Rosen, who's a great lawyer, personal injury lawyer, he's part of our team. We had a team, like a family of lawyers that all worked together. And we found out that that security company wasn't trained, didn't know what to do, but worse, which is really crazy, they never sounded the alarm.
Oh my God.
They never pushed the button. For 7 minutes, they could have pushed the button and they didn't. And then the towers collapsed.
Oh my God.
It still didn't go off when half the towers collapsed. And then about 6 minutes later, the alarm went off.
Oh my God.
So how many lives would have been saved if that alarm had gone off? Now, how did we know that? Because the survivors were such an important part of this process. I've worked with them every week for the last year. Greg, there's not a day that has gone by in the last year that I haven't talked to one of the victims. Because, you know, I do class action work. So this is what I do every day. Other lawyers don't understand, well, how do you have 100 clients? How do you service 100 clients? Well, in a class action, I could have 10,000, 100,000 clients. That's a lot of work. You got to keep them updated. You got to keep them knowledgeable. But there's one reason you do it is because they may help you prove your case. People don't realize that. Your clients are your most important asset. Because when we started this case, Greg, and I was down at the site crying, it was bleak. You know, I mean, I remember being interviewed by CNN, which I didn't want to do. But they're like, Adam, we understand your client, Raisa Rodriguez, called her brother, forgot to hang up the phone, and her cell phone is on, and you hear minute by minute, second by second, everything she's doing. Because it was caught on tape, and she's screaming, fuck, oh my God, what do we do? And it's incredible because you don't know how you're going to react in that situation, right? We all hope we would do the right thing. She's like, we can't leave until we go get every one of our elderly neighbors. We got to get them out of the building. And she and Yadi, her friend, went door to door, knocking on doors, getting all the people to leave the building. It was just incredible. So when we were out there, you know, I'm looking at this site where my grandparents grew up. My grandfather was a plasterer. He did all the buildings in Miami Beach. And I'm looking at my backyard, and there's just this disaster. So I saw it on TV the night before, but it didn't hit me. You know, we prepared the complaint. We drafted a very good class action complaint, but it didn't hit me. Then I'm sitting there at ground zero. It's complete destruction. We don't know who's alive and who's dead in the rubble. I see hundreds of Israeli soldiers in my backyard. I see dump truck after dump truck bringing debris, which I think are bodies. And I see these priests standing there, and I just lose it. I'm just crying for like 20 minutes straight because I can't believe that this is our backyard. This is Miami, Florida.
Yeah.
You know, everything I've ever learned is to be a class action lawyer. And I made the pledge at that moment. I was going to hunt down every single person that was involved and hold them liable. And I said this, and I just saw some interviews that I had done where people were showing me on CNN. I forgot about them. You know, it's just so emotional to me because I learned that the building had $30 million in insurance, and all of the victims that I spoke to said, we'll never let you build on this property. It's holy. It'd be sacrilegious. So you're not going to use that property. So I'm thinking, oh my God, we may have 100 people dead. We have 120 people that are homeless, and there's $30 million. What are we going to do? And the next door neighbor, the construction, is represented by Greenberg Traurig, one of the best defense firms in the world, a great firm that we know very well in Miami. We're not going to collect against them. So what are we going to do? It was just dramatic, and it looked bleak. It really did. And that's when I said, I'm filing a class action because for 30 years, I've learned one skill. I'm not great at a lot of things, but I got to do class action litigation. Can't balance my checkbook, but I know class action. And I said, that's the device that's going to help these 200 people all together. Because in some cases, Greg, you know, if you know the insurance company, you can go settle and you take the insurance policy. I did not want that to happen here. I wanted every single person, whether they're rich, whether they're poor, whether they knew a big shot, whether they did it, whether they had connections, they did. Everyone should be treated equal. So it has to be a class action so nobody could take the money, the insurance monies, and settle their claim. It had to all go through the court. So I just sat back and I said, how can we get this done? One, we need Michael Hanzman. It's incredible. I'm the only Jewish person in the country that loves Joel Osteen. And, you know, he always says there's a reason for things. Michael Hanzman should have been a federal judge 30 years ago. No doubt. Smartest judge we have in Miami, most intelligent lawyer, and the practical experience. He's a great class action lawyer. So when do you get that real experience? You're on the bench. You're the smartest guy in the room. He should be a federal judge. Well, he wasn't. You know, and there's various reasons why. But thank God he wasn't appointed to be a federal judge, because only Michael Hanzman, only Judge Handsman, I really thought this, would have a Zoom hearing that night after we filed the complaint and said, this will not be business as usual. That night, the night I filed the complaint, he held a Zoom hearing saying, you're preserving all evidence. I don't think there's any other judge in the country that would have done it. Secondly, the association was just horrendous. The association hired a public relations firm the next day who tried to get them out of disasters. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you have 100 dead people, half of the board is dead, and the people that are surviving are hiring a PR agency to try to show that they didn't do anything wrong? No. Judge Handsman, you got to get them to give up a receivership. You got to appoint a receiver over the board, because they're going to have certain claims that are stronger than my claims for the victims, because they're in privity. They're the actual board that hired all these companies to help the building. So they have a better legal claim than a lot of the victims will have. So you need Michael Goldberg. He is the best receiver in the country. Him specifically. We filed a motion to appoint Michael Goldberg.
Yeah.
You need Michael Goldberg, you need Michael Hanzman, and you need to start this case immediately and get a good group of lawyers. You know, some of the best PI lawyers in the country, I have the pleasure of knowing for 30 years. Jack Scarola, Stuart Grossman, Ricardo Sid Martinez. We need them in there, because that's not what I do. I don't do personal injury law. So we need the class action, we need the personal injury lawyers, we need Michael Goldberg, and we need Judge Handsman. If we have that in place, anything can happen.
Okay,
And
can I
we
get a
got it in
timeout?
place.
Can I get a timeout? You got a lot of moving parts. Can I get a timeout? All right, okay. So I've been following the story tangentially, you know, throughout the time and pestering you. Come on, give us updates. And you're like, not until it's over. I got it. All right. So what I originally was following was the condo board knew that there was structural problems. They decided that they needed X number of dollars, an assessment. They sent out a letter to the unit owners saying we need what, so many millions of dollars, and it just never happened. So how does that play into this whole equation? Because you're talking about the board, and half of the board members you said died, but let's talk about what was the board's, what happened on that level.
Yeah, Greg, those are good points, because, you know, what was available at the time of the crash? Well, the minutes of the board meetings, those were available, right? What the board decided to do was available. These are things that any reporter could have found in a couple days, which is what we did, right? So they were up for their 30-year inspection. Every year, every 30 years in Florida, a condo has to go through an inspection, which is just shocking that we're the leaders in the country. There's no other state that requires condos to be inspected every 30 years. And that's only after Hurricane Andrew. It used to be much longer. So that's why today they're saying, well, why would you wait 30 years? Isn't that a long time? There's actually lobbyists that fight us because we tried even in the past year to have it more quicker or better updates or more inspections. 30 years is all we could get. So you look at the board minutes and you did see during the 30-year inspection, a couple reports from an expert, Mr. Morabito Consulting, that said, your building is falling apart. You know, it's got some real damage. So they had a meeting. They decided they had to do an assessment. Like any building, people weren't like, oh, great, I want to give $1 million. You know, there was the typical, well, tell us how much we have to pay. Why do we have to pay it? It was just like any other condo. It wasn't, we're not paying it. It was, okay, we're doing an assessment. Now we got to do it. How much is it going to cost? They're in the process. We're going to have to do an assessment. All of that was in the works. All of that started. So they're in the process of raising the money to pay to do the construction. That's the level here that we knew when we started the case. When we pieced through that and we started to read the experts' reports, we started to say, well, why wasn't it done quicker? And it wasn't that the building didn't approve the assessment quicker. It was that a lot of these reports that came out fell on deaf ears. You know, and in Miami, Greg, we have a lot of old condominiums. I was called by maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people after the building collapsed saying, my building looks the exact same way. In Seattle, Washington, in Puerto Rico, in California, I'm scared to come home. What should I do? Because there's damages in most buildings. Yeah. It doesn't mean your building's going to fall. So that's what made this extraordinary. But the board was on top of it. You know, maybe they didn't say, oh, immediately let's fix it. But usually when you read a report, hey, we got deterioration, you have to go through the process of having a board meeting, saying we're going to pass it. But for example, they showed their lawyers the report, right? And all of the defendants, let me say this, there's no way this could have happened without the amazing support and cooperation of all the defense lawyers. They have been phenomenal. Yeah. Okay. Wow. So we did place blame on a lot of them, but proving those 48 cases would have been difficult. Yeah. Don't think that we have any smoking gun, amazing document that says, you know, haha, we have to keep secret that we know we collapsed the building. You're not going to find that. There were some very interesting memos where people didn't do things in hindsight. They should have done things quicker. The people that found the damage should have fixed the building quicker. The inspectors from the town that came over and said, the building's in great shape. That wasn't done properly. You know, so looking back, there's a lot of people to point the finger, and those fingers were pointed at 48 people that fortunately put up all their insurance money and got a $1.2 billion recovery. Like that security company we talked about, Greg. That woman was not trained. She was not trained properly. Yeah. You know, it's a coincidence that that company happens to be a publicly traded company with a $514 million insurance policy. I mean, isn't that God looking down? It could have been Adam and Greg's security agency. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, some buildings have local security companies. They happen to have had one of the richest security companies in the country. Thank God. You know, God was looking out for us.
I would not have hired the Adam and Greg security company. Maybe the Greg and Adam security company, but the Adam. All right. So now you also mentioned Greenberg Charg, the next door neighbor. What's up with? I mean, and when I was following the story, the first things I was hearing about the board and the next door neighbor. What's up with the next door neighbor? Why are we blaming the next door neighbor?
Well, our job in the beginning, Greg, as the lawyers that were handling the litigation, the lead counsel, was to figure out who are the targets. And it was very hard because we served third-party subpoenas, but you know the law. Then we had documents coming in, and then we had to make decisions very quickly. In one weekend, and this isn't giving a secret out, we needed to start getting the settlements going, right? Because you know in a lawsuit, if you settle with the first defendant, at least you get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
So we killed ourselves, especially my law firm and myself. We went after Becker Polikoff, which was the lawyers for the board.
Yeah.
When I suggested to our team, look, I think what they did may have risen to the level of a crime. Yeah, culpability or even a crime. I got an email from my co-counsel that said, Adam, you'll probably be sanctioned for doing that because here's a third DCA opinion that says a tenant is not in privity with the board's lawyers, so we're dismissing a claim by the tenant against the law firm. So if you bring this claim, you're going to be sanctioned. So a lot of these things, people are like, you're crazy. Well, if you really went into it, and we read 82,000 documents in one weekend. My partner Joey K and I, 82,000. We literally read documents for 48 hours straight. Yeah. And we're piecing the story together of what happened. And I said, I don't care about the law. What they did in our allegations, and they have their own defense, and they're represented by wonderful counsel. Rob Klein, who's one of the best lawyers in the country, came in for them. And he was wonderful. But I started to piece it together and say, no. They got the report of what was going on. So what did they do? I don't care that there's no contract between them and a tenant. What did they do? Everybody's relying on the best law firm in the country, Becker Polikoff. What did they do? So I actually asked to take their deposition the next day. And Judge Hanzman said, yeah, I mean, are you ready, Mr. Moskowitz? You have, 1 week with the documents. Are you ready to take his deposition? I said, yeah. And we took it. And it was powerful. We said to them, you could have done a lot of things differently. And I can't get into too much of the details. I don't want to talk about the merits of the case, but they settled. And it was amazing because we had great insurance experts, Greg, which is a huge lesson about the case. We had coverage counsel that knows so much about insurance that I'll never learn in my lifetime. And they were able to say, well, we could go back 5 years of insurance policies because there was damage to the building each year. Even though the building fell in 2021 and there was a policy, you could go back to 2018 and argue there was damage to the building back then because you have reports saying there's damage. So you could get the 6 million, the 6 million, the 6 million, the 6 million, put it all together, you got 30 million.
Yeah.
And that's the insurance experts that were genius. And we followed that for every defendant. We didn't go to 1 year insurance. We went for many years. That's how you get $1 billion. Nice. And that was all the credit to these insurance experts who helped us get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I'm making notes about that. But the next door neighbor, what did they do?
So clearly something was going on because when you start to piece together the records, and that's what we had to do. You had to spend the first month not sleeping. And again, this is for no money, right? When we got there, there's no money. There's no insurance. You can't build on the building, which Judge Handsman changed their mind, and we got $120 million for the property. But there's no money. So we dedicated ourselves to do this case night and day, and nobody can argue that there was a big pot of money because there was nothing there. But we knew that if we didn't work 24 hours a day from the very beginning and have such amazing people like Michael Goldberg and Judge Handsman, there's no shot. You're not going to get anything. So we worked night and day, and we read the notes, and we started to piece it together. Some of the tenants wrote to the board and wrote to the law firm, I can't sleep at night because my building is shaking when they're doing construction across the street. That's not normal. You're shaking? We had a guy who would say, I'd run on the treadmill every afternoon, but I actually fell off it because of the construction next door. So you start to piece it together and you'd say, well, what are you doing? Are you doing blasting? Do you have vibration meters? And this is where the experts come in. And we had a great lawyer on our team that knows construction defects. And we said, did you have your vibration meters there? You know, what were they reading? I mean, what causes a building to shake? It just can't shake. So we started to get to the internal emails, and we started to read what they were saying secretly. And again, all this is mediation, but we started to piece together that they may be culpable because the way they were building their gorgeous tower, which was 1 foot away from our property, you know, something was up. So then we say, how did they get that easement? Remember, Surfside and Miami Beach are here. There's a whole block dividing CTS and their next door neighbor, right? Before they started construction, they got to build a block closer. How did they get that easement?
Yeah.
So we started to dig into it, and the city of Miami Beach gave them the easement. How? You know, why was that okay? Like, how did they get to be so close? So we're uncovering facts, and a lot of it I can't discuss because it's in the litigation. But there was a lot of red flags, and give the companies and the defendants so much credit because they have their defenses. They do. I mean, proving that a building knocked another building down is incredibly difficult. But they said, you know what? Because of the travesty, because of the tragedy, we're going to, thankfully, we have insurance. So we're going to give the insurance because the liability is in the billions. Right? And that's the way we started every mediation. I'd say to you, Greg, you have 30 million in insurance. And the defendant would say, okay, we'll offer you 1. And we would say, the damages are $2 billion. You either give us all your insurance or you go to trial for $2 billion. How about 2 million? What are you not understanding? You either put up everything you can or you go to trial. And we had to stand firm that way. And that snowballed into $1.2 billion.
All right. So I don't want to get off the next door neighbor, and I don't want to get off the $120 million that you referenced about the building. We're going to get to that in a second. But before I do that, I want to give one quote that I just got off my sources from the judge who said, I could not be more proud of this agreement and the people who led this case. I've been on the bench for 10 years and handled a number of very difficult cases, and this is one of a kind. So I'm just throwing that in there. No response from you. That's a compliment. Okay, now let's go. So the next door neighbor, they're building like a foot away. It sounds, you know, it's a big high rise. It's not a little rinky-dink shack that they're building next door. It sounds like a recipe for disaster. Is that, I'm just out of curiosity, did that building get finished? Is it up and running and occupied now? Did they get a certificate of occupancy or whatever it is that they need to get the building
It is one of the most gorgeous buildings in Miami Beach. It is one of the most highly sought after. You know, the #1 ranked tennis player Djokovic, he had an apartment in there. They go for $5 or $6 million. Beautiful Italian marble, gorgeous building that was built by Terra Construction. That's one of the best developers in the world. I mean, their properties all around the world are amazing. They really are. So yes, that was built. It's up today. It's a gorgeous building. And the question of whether it had anything to do with our collapse is still unanswered. But that's why I'm saying you got to give a lot of credit to these defendants because they had good defenses. They did. I mean, we have 9 of the best experts in the world, soil experts, groundwater experts, water experts. I mean, these people working even with NHTSA are going to be in the rubble for years to try to figure out, did the next door neighbor's construction have something to do with this falling? We don't know the answer, but there was enough there at least that we had shown to get a company to put up their insurance money. And again, all the credit goes towards Michael Goldberg, who had his own experts, his own team, Judge Hanzman, who said, I'm going to have hearings every night. You could file a motion to compel verbally the night before, and I'll hear it the next day. I mean, this was not litigation as anything I've ever known in my life. This was warp speed. You're not going to work on weekends. Forget your family. You're going to dive into this and work with all these various people to start to get the ball rolling so that we could get $1 billion. Because, Greg, the first thing the judge said is he's a genius and he knows class action law. He knows there's going to be an allocation issue between the survivors and the people who died. This is based on Supreme Court precedent, okay? There's going to be, like in asbestos cases, there was always a conflict between asbestos people who died and people with asbestos who may die in 30 years from now, right? So the US Supreme Court has denied class certification in those cases because these people want money now. These people want money in 30 years. There's a conflict there. Judge Handsman had such the foresight from the first day. He said, we got to resolve that internal fight immediately. As hard as it's going to be, and as any other judge in the country would put that off, kick that can down the road, I'm going to have that fight now, because if that gets resolved, then I could have a limited fund class action, because I could then say what they get and what they get. So he immediately put Bruce Greer into this thing, and I was appointed lead of the economic people. People like Judge Rosen and Ricardo Sid, they were appointed to be on the wrongful death side, and with me was Gonzalo Dorda. That was our real figurehead. I meant not figurehead, but he's the guy physically. He's going to be in charge because he doesn't represent any wrongful death people, and Judge Rosen doesn't represent any economic loss people. So we'll fight each other and go to a mediation so that we could resolve what the economic loss people should get. Genius idea. And it was a battle. We fought each other, hated each other, filed pleadings in camera, in secret, against it, and it resolved in $83 million going to the economic people when we didn't have any settlements. So it was amazing. The wrongful death people said, you can have $83 million of the money, but we don't know if anything's going to come in besides maybe the sale of the property. But they needed the money because they're homeless. So God was watching and said, that was such a mitzvah, I'm going to bring in another $1 billion. And then we increased the 83 because the 83 people took a cut, they thought, at the time. So that was increased to 96 million. So they get 96 million. The wrongful death people could put in and get their claims, and we could go forward together in peace and form the best team we can. The survivors working with the wrongful death people. And that was an incredible task. Great credit to Bruce Greer. More foresight to Judge Handsman, who saw that, because there's a case in Katrina, Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, that said, because you have these two classes that have adverse interests, I'm not going to certify the class in a limited fund. So Judge Handsman said, I'm going to address that right up front. What judge wants to deal with such horrible, fighting in the beginning of the case? But Judge Handsman said, if I can get that resolved, then I could get a quick resolution.
Okay, just to simplify it, at least from my perspective, when you're referring to the economic class and the wrongful death class, what you're really talking about is the wrongful death class are the people that died, and their claims were for basically their death. And then you have the economic loss issue were for the people that actually survived and were homeless and needed money to basically live on.
Exactly. You have the survivors of the 98 estates of the people who died, who want to collect under Florida law for the loss of their loved ones. Then on the other side, you have the economic people that lost their apartments, that had an appraised value of 96 million, plus their personal injury claims. And that's what we're doing now. We have been working with 75 people. It's been nonstop. 75 victims that survived that want to make a claim for personal injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and the loss of contents. Because the judge allowed people that didn't own apartments, because that was in the 96 million. If you're a renter, you could put in for $50,000 for the loss of your property. So we created these claim forms, and that's something that was important to me, because in a class action, you know how the claim forms are sometimes ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can't read them. They're
You
10
throw 'em
pages
away.
long. Throw them away. It had to be, English speak is what we call it. It had to be one page, so easy. So what the judge accepted, our recommendation, let's have a simple claim form. Were you in the building? Did you suffer damage? Yes, you get $50,000. That's the process today.
Yeah.
If you suffered more, you just got to fill out a 3-page form. I was in the building, I suffered damage, or I wasn't in the building, but I still think I have impact under Florida law. I want to seek $1 million. And the judge has gotten his good friend and colleague, one of the best judges we've ever had in Miami, Judge John Colby. He's going to sit with Judge Handsman in August, and every day they're going to hear all the personal injury claims and all the wrongful death claims and decide how much to give each person. It's a very organized fashion. That's going forward today that everybody needs to know.
All right, so yeah, and that's like listen, all the story and the soap opera and the drama, are great, but at this point now, there's a settlement and the terms. All right, so a pile of money is there, and now anybody that is eligible is going to have to go through a process. And obviously, there are a bunch of lawyers that are representing everybody. Everybody's represented, right?
Everybody should know, and this is a big problem. You do not need a lawyer. You do not need to hire a lawyer. Everybody thought they did. The court has appointed lead counsel, me on the economic side, Ricardo Sid on the wrongful death side. We are here to help you for free. This is the shocking part people don't get. The $96 million that's going to the economic survivors, not a penny is being taken out for attorney's fees. They're getting every dollar of their money. That never happens in any lawsuit ever.
Yeah.
The wrongful death people that are putting in for their claim, they're getting their money. So the judge says, if you had a 40% fee agreement, which some of these lawyers did, they went up, they signed up some victims at 40%, which is the typical rate for personal injury. They're not taking out 40% of your claim. You're keeping your claim.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. So, but you don't need a lawyer. So there's 3 weeks until July. In the middle of July is the deadline. You must file a simple claim form or a regular claim form. They're 2 different forms. They're all on the receiver's website. And if it's a simple form for personal injury, you say you were there that night, you have injury, you get $50,000. If you're a renter and you had all of your contents lost, I lost my contents, $50,000. If you have a wrongful death and you don't want to go through the whole big process, wrongful death, I am the representative of the estate for one of the 98 people. I want $1 million. You get $1 million. If you can prove you're the representative of that person who died, you get $1 million. That's the simple process, because a lot of people didn't want to go through a claims process.
Okay, and I'm going to try in my show notes to provide links for those that are unrepresented, so that, with the deadline and all that, so they have that information.
They could call us anytime. We're representing 78 now, I think, of these people, walking them through saying, should you fill out the simple form or should you go the other route? Simple form, you get $50,000 and $1 million for the wrongful death, but that's it. If you want more, you got to fill out the more. Okay,
tying up some loose ends. The next door neighbors with a spectacular condo, they got sued and they paid.
87 Park, right? They paid their insurance money.
All right, so another loose end. Initially, there was big discussion about the building collapse, that property, that specific property, nothing was going to happen to it. There was going to be no building, but eventually it was sold. The judge signed off on it, $120 million, and that got thrown into this whole pile of money, right?
Yes, that's done.
Okay, so who bought that, and do you have any idea what's going to happen with the property? They're going to build another condo?
What I know, it's a company in the United Arab Emirates. It's a very, very well-known real estate investment firm, and they're going to build, according to everything that we've understood, a beautiful high-rise condo on the property.
Okay, I actually have a question from one of our live audience members. What if you had your own content insurance for more than $50,000? Does one offset the other? Does the settlement offset that, or can you also?
Technically, no. That issue came up. It's called in law, it's called the collateral source doctrine. If you have other money in a lawsuit, so Greg, I hit you in my car and you suffer damage.
Yeah, and it was bad. I got to tell you, I'm still feeling it.
You're still feeling it, and you'll still claim it for the next 30 years. So you have insurance.
Yeah.
It's standard law that if you have insurance, that doesn't deduct what the tortfeasor has to pay you.
Yeah.
So it does not offset it.
Okay, good.
And that's important for people who died. If they had a life insurance policy, they're still going to collect what they would from a jury for their wrongful death, even if they have life insurance.
So you
Because
get both.
you're not going to fault somebody for buying life insurance and being careful.
You get both.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other. Okay.
Right.
All right. So now I want to kind of, I know that when the discussion of the settlement was happening, I know you mentioned that NHTSA was involved. That's the National Highway Transportation Administration Agency?
Yes. Yes.
Federal agency.
They're not involved at all in what we're doing. They're doing their own investigation separate from us that could take years.
All right. So the federal agencies, the state agencies, and the local agencies are still investigating what happened.
Yes.
All right. So let's say they conclude that all these 48 defendants were not responsible at all. Is that going to impact, let's say 3 years from now, they say, you know what actually happened was an act of God. Nobody was to blame here. Does that undo the settlement?
Not at all. It has nothing to do with the settlement. The settlement is final. The settlement is what the parties decided to do with the risks associated as of today, right? So as of today, there's risks on everybody. There's risks on the plaintiffs because these are very, very difficult claims to prove. Nobody will dispute that. So in exchange, we've settled the claims for a certain amount of money. Is it the full amount of money? No, but it's a settlement because there's risks to all sides. We don't know what NHTSA is going to come out with. We don't know what the city of Surfside's investigation, the city of the state of Florida investigation. Everybody's doing investigations. We don't know what the end result's going to be, but considering those risks, you reach a settlement.
Yeah.
And you want people to move on with their lives. I mean, these people have been homeless now for a year. And I'm serious. A lot of these people put their life savings into their condo. They have no other money. They lost the condo. I mean, they're penniless. Penniless.
You did an unbelievable job. I congratulate you. Did we cover base? I know there's a lot of other stories going on here, but did we hit the main things, at least about the terms of the settlement?
Yeah, I do want to tell you about one other thing that someone reminded me about yesterday. When I went down to the site, and it was horrible. I mean, it was just destruction everywhere. It was raining. It was really dark and raining. And I talked to one of the Israeli soldiers because I had been in this Israeli army program in high school. I had done a lot of work with Israel, high school in Israel. So they invited me to do this pre-army program where you go back to Israel for a couple months during the army, and then they show you how fun it is so that you'll go back and you'll sign up for the 3-year commitment. So I did that. So I have a very special place in my heart for the Israeli soldiers. And I was talking to one about it, and we started to talk about a Hebrew word, and it's called Sadek. Okay? The reason it was so interesting is Sadek in Hebrew means justice, right? A word which is taken from Sadek, especially in English, is tzedekah, which most people heard of, which means charity. So it's an interesting discussion, even in the Torah, about it, because Sadek is to go do justice. Tzedekah is to give charity. And when I thought about it, it was sort of, what path are we going to take? We could do the Tzedekah path, and we asked the legislators, could you please set up a fund like 9/11 to help the victims, right? Nobody did. Nobody was willing to give a penny. State, federal, national, international. There was a few charities that contributed some money, but nobody was giving tzedakah to these victims. So we knew that Sadek means justice, and sometimes you have to take justice in your own hands, and you have to make justice, not like tzedakah where people have to give it to you, you have to take it. And it's sort of a theme to the case where at that point, we knew nobody is coming in to help these victims. They're not passing any federal legislation. They're not even wiping out the mortgages, Greg. There's like 10 people that still had Fannie Mae mortgages over their property. We asked them, would you just forgive them? You know, they're forgiving billions of dollars in student debt. Would you please just give these people out of their $100,000 that they still owe on their mortgage? The answer was no.
Wow.
So we had to go down that Sadek path and say, if nobody's going to help these people, we will. And we'll do it for free, at that time, because there's no money to collect. Fortunately, there's a pot of money there. So that's when the court recently said, you know what? Maybe I will give you compensation, but let's see how everything is paid out in September. Let's make sure every victim is paid out. Let's see the recovery, and then we'll get back to the attorney's fees, because that should be the last thing that's ever decided in this case.
Adam, you did a mitzvah. It's a year. It's amazing that this happened a year ago. And, you're going to be providing a lot of relief to a lot of people. And I know that some people still want to get an answer about what happened, and you're going to get that as well. It's going to take time. And I'm just going to conclude on this note, Adam. One of our audience members wants to point out that you are not the only Jewish person that likes Joel Osteen, that this other person who happens to be my partner, she also likes Joel Osteen also, and is Jewish. But in any event, Adam, anything else? You got last word.
No, I mean, please, there's such a great list of amazing people that made this done. I would be remiss if I didn't, Bruce Greer donated all of his time, weekends, nights, 3 a.m. Judge Hanzman was amazing. Michael Goldberg was amazing. All the other lawyers that worked with us were amazing. The people that worked directly with us, like Stuart Grossman, amazing. The personal injury lawyers, they donated and dedicated their time. So it's a real community coming together, Greg. And it just shows you, I am so proud of Miami. I'm so proud of the legal profession. I'm so proud of my friends, because we could just do this much for such horror that these people had to go through. The first person I met was Mr. Patel. He lost his daughter and his son-in-law and his granddaughter to this horrible tragedy. You know what he was dealing with that week? When people were homeless, I get it, and I cared for the victims. You know what he was dealing with? His in-laws were not from India, so they were going to bury the grandchild differently, and under their law, all the children wouldn't go to heaven with their parents because the daughter was 5 months pregnant. So if they weren't buried in the same way, they wouldn't go to heaven. So for 2 months, he had to debate his family, and finally he got them to bury the kids in the same way, so they all went to heaven together. Those are the stories that we had to deal with all year. And the fact that we could do a little bit to help them makes all of my class action work since we went to law school, Greg, all worth every minute of it.
All right, now I'm getting one last question here, but I have to vet it to make sure it's appropriate for you. No, that's a whole nother topic. I'm sorry, I can't ask that question, but
I'm happy to come back anytime, Greg.
I know you, and you have no choice, but Adam and I did go to the University of Miami Law School together. So shout out to the U. This is a great guy, my best buddy from University of Miami Law School, although I do have other good buddies. So don't get upset and oh my God, I can't believe you said that. What about me? All right, but listen, buildings are going to collapse. I have a feeling this story is not going to be. Bridge is collapsing, the FIU bridge. Let's just, everybody be safe out there, All right, Adam, thanks for coming on. I know you're tired or whatever, but you must have had 5 cups of coffee before you did this, because your level of energy is outstanding. And again, I thank you for coming on, and I'm going to try to get this thing up here as soon as possible today. All right.
Thank you so much, Greg. And thank you for doing these podcasts, because I watched many others, and they're so informative to people, and it really gives people an outlet and an avenue of information which didn't exist before. So thank you.
All right, great. All right, listen, that's the end of this episode of Cut to the Chase. Everybody be safe. If you got questions and you're living in a condo, you got to talk to your board. You better make sure that they listen and everybody's on board. All right. These are safety issues paramount to everybody. All right, that's it. We'll talk soon.